Salutations, everyone! Welcome back to another Crusader Kings 3 guide. I'm Lord Forwind, and today we're going to be talking about clan management. Yes, I'm going to teach you how to run clans in Crusader Kings 3. But before we jump into that, if this video does help you in any way, shape, or form, please do like, comment, subscribe, those great things that help people build up on YouTube. Let me know what tip you found the most useful, or if you've got other ones, put them below. And I will mention that this video will be timestamped, so you can search below, hovering over the video to find out which section you're in, or go down into the description and jump to that time. So, a clan government. So right now, clan governments are Muslim, basically. I suspect this will be expanded later on to other areas, but hopefully the same logic will apply. So a clan government, according to the description they provide, united by kinship, by blood, or shared relations with a symbolic ancestor. Basically, it's your dynasty. This is both good and bad, and there's a lot of mechanics to go over with them. The things to realize about the clans, that they are unstable. They tend to boom or bust. If they're very united, they tend to do very well. If they're very divided, there's a lot of warfare, and you tend to have smaller realms. It's an interesting playstyle compared to the feudal realms of most of the rest of Europe. Clans are, the best description was given by one of the designers. Basically, they say clans have a higher cap, but are less stable. Basically, if you've got a massive clan empire, you're probably going to make more money out of it and be able to expand better than if you're a feudal realm. On the other hand, it's harder to get to that point. And you can collapse. Clan governments are particularly good at making lots of money and having strong dynasty members, which is good and bad. Okay, so the most important aspect of a clan, and in fact most governments in this game, is the succession. However, before we get to succession, we're going to take a slight detour into the unique clan mechanic of House Unity, which will help explain succession later on. So, here we go. So if you go to your dynasty, in this case we're the Viziers of Morocco, mainly because we're not involved in a war and not involved in struggles. So here you will notice that there is a House Unity versus the standard dynasty. All the dynasty stuff is still there and it's all very similar, but the House Unity is different. So you can take different actions to unite or divide your house, and it does list them below. It's a little, I don't think this is 100%. No, it's not. It does miss some actions to divide or unite. But you have this meter from basically 0 to 200, and at different segments you will get different bonuses or penalties. So if we start at the worst one, antagonistic, it changes your succession law to antagonistic succession. Well, what does antagonistic succession mean? Well, it means that your house really doesn't get along, and if we hover over it, you will see your titles will be divided equally. Basically, it's Gavelkind. It's just called different. Now, your house at the same time will like you less, your player heir will like you a bit more, and any eligible children will like you a bit more. You want to avoid this one if you can. Now, on the other hand, you have unlimited access to invasions, which is really powerful. If you want to build a powerful realm, this is a great way to do it. I guess to simulate the movements of various tribes and other people invading, conquering, and then falling apart. Anyhow, CBs require one less level of fame. You have various effects on House Opinion. Basically, if you win, you'll get House Unity. If you lose, they tend to get more divided. If you white peace, I think it's a slight gain towards Unity. Can't say you get too many white pieces. You can challenge the house head in order to take their place. I have never had a challenge when I was the head of the dynasty, and when I wanted to be, I very quickly challenged and took over. Now, you are much more likely to have claimant factions. This is actually very common and very annoying. Basically, your clan will try and take over the throne. You want to avoid this as much as possible, basically, this whole unity tree. The only reason you might want it is if you want the invasion CB. Now, CBs cost less, which is great, and this is kind of unique to clan governments. You have house unity decisions. For example, reinforce army with loyal officers will give you powerful men-at-arms. Organize house members for war. They're going to fight more often. Now, the next level, competitive succession. Again, divided, slightly better opinion with your house. Everything else stays the same. You get slightly less invasions. You see the pattern here, so I'm not going to go over it all. You get an intrigue network and house members for war. The intrigue network is actually quite useful if you're planning to like assassinate your way to power. It's quite useful. Or you're trying to assassinate a lord or scheme against an overlord who's not part of your house. The next one is where we're at right now. You have passive succession. Lion's share goes to your player heir, which is better than Gavelkind. It's like, let's see, I don't think we can see it here, but it's a higher level of Gavelkind. It'd be like, I forget what it's called. Anyhow, it's good. You still want to get out of this one. People can still challenge you. You do gain a bonus to lifestyle, which is quite nice. You can improve taxation, which is really cool, and consult house members. So if we were to hover over here, you'll see improved administration. All clan vassals will give us more money per landed house member, which can be really useful. 1% for both, in this case 3 total. Our house is kind of small. But it's only available every 20 years, and you can only use it for 10 years at a time. So just thinking around that. Now you can also consult house members, whereas if they're on their council, you gain bonuses towards progress and skill impact. Remains active to your house, your character dies. So this is one you probably want to use when you're in this, especially if you've got a young ruler. However, we want to move towards these other successions, or rather unities, which affect succession. Friendly succession here is good. It's basically a slightly better version of the house unity and passive succession. More titles tend to go to your ruler. People like you a bit more. Your heir really likes you. You can rescue people. You can declare war to save family members, which comes with a boost to unity. You can unite the house, which is kind of interesting. I can't say I've used it that much, but basically you can kind of pull the house into your realm or take it over. It's useful if you your lands get divided outside of your realm or just get split up. It's pretty useful to regain it. Do be aware it does cost you more for CBs and dread decays faster. You also don't get as much monthly lifestyle. Ironically, impassive is really good if you want lifestyle experience. Either side, you start to lose the benefit. 10 bailiffs, get control, improve the economy. You want to trigger this improve the economy basically every time you get a chance to win friendly, because it tends to make your clan vassals improve their land more, so they'll have more stewardship, and it gets you more tax. Really good. But the goal of all house unity is to become harmonious. Harmonious succession is basically primogeniture succession. If you can get all the way up there, basically all the titles are going to go to your player heir, which is really good. You want to get that. It allows you to maintain your realm. If you're anything below it, you'll start to lose various small pieces. Especially, you won't lose land if it's all concentrated in your capital duchy. So having a large capital duchy is really useful. So overall, this is where you want to get. You can placate your vassals. Basically, you can improve the vassal's opinion of you. They're less likely to revolt. And again, improve the economy, similar to exactly the same as that. These two are similar. These two are similar. The middle one is kind of weird. Regardless, unity is a big fact of the game, and you want to try and build it up. So let's just finish off succession here. You can, of course, see all the various succession laws up here as well. It's quite useful. Later on, you can get to primogeniture. It does, of course, involve having the innovation to get there. Ultimogeniture, similar. House seniority, again, table of princes. You get it slightly earlier. It's not available to the Magrebes, which is where we are. But if you do happen to be in Bohemia and for some reason you're a clan vassal, you can enact this. The reality is, I can't say I've ever seen a Muslim Bohemia. But hey, might be a fun run. So just so you know, you're going to start up here in these succession laws. Late game, you can transfer to these. When you get a chance to flip to primogeniture, definitely do so. It means you don't have to worry about staying up in harmonious succession. So right now, if we only have one child, but I will show you a save file later on that should have multiple heirs. Now the question becomes, now that we've got unity, do we build it up? Well, there are several ways to do so. The important thing to realize is that your whole clan, or basically your house, will make various decisions. And whatever decisions they make, they will alter house unity. If you've played Struggle in either Iberia or the Iran-Persian area, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. All the minor lords will do various things that will have bonuses. However, there are some things you can do to affect it whichever way you want, and by and large, you're going to want to build up unity. So let's go over them. It does cover some here. On the other hand, this is not the easiest way to get unity. Yes, you can try and do all these. It does take a while. Not all of them are particularly useful, so I'm going to mention the ones I found particularly useful in the game. First off, and probably the easiest, you have a new decision called Steer House Unity. You will increase unity by 10, which is huge, 1/20th of the bar, basically, and house unity will increase yearly for the next 10 years. It is 4 a year for my runs I've tested this on. It's 4% a year, or, well, 4 of 200, which is about 2%. You can also, if you want to, decrease house unity, although, by and large, if you're the head of your house, you want it to be united. But theoretically, you could destroy it and get lots of CBs and invasions. It'd be an interesting run, let's put it that way. It does cost a decent amount of unity. A decent amount of piety, but you get a good amount of unity. You're going to want to do this basically whenever it pops up. Now, it's unavailable for 10 years. However, it increases for 10 years. So every 10 years, you want to hit this button. I recommend notify when this decision becomes available. You'll thank me later. Now, other ways that are easy to get stuff. If you manage to find a member of your family who is ruling land in your empire, and you usually can, heirs make great people to give land to, because if you form an alliance with them, you'll gain unity. And just like that, they can't revolt against you, and the house unity should have gone up, or will go up if once he accepts the alliance. Now, there are a few other actions you can take. We can't show them here, obviously because this is a child, but you have this new clan interaction on the diplomacy, which I just get to, of course, by right-clicking on them. Clan accused of decadence will lower house unity. It will also make it easier to scheme against them and ruin their opinion with other people. So if you really have a vassal you want to tear down to size and you don't care about your unity, definitely accuse them of decadence. On the other hand, extol virtuousness. You want to try and do this whenever it pops up. It's limited, I think, every 10 years. Find somebody who's not a problem, ideally like an unlanded brother or a distant cousin, and extol their virtuousness. It will get you, I think, 10 unity. Is the easiest ways to do that. Now, the other one is if you make somebody your guardian. Let's just path this through a second or two. There we go. Or not path, process it through. If we, for example, make this person a hostage, or we make ourselves their guardian, it will also increase house unity. Just between those alone, you can usually get about 20 or a little bit more. Cool feature is a lot of times clans will offer guardians to you if you have the same culture and religion. So it's not that hard to maintain at least friendly unity. Trying to get to harmonious can be difficult. And in fact, if you get one person of your house who really doesn't like you or is causing a lot of trouble, they can tank it pretty much on their own. At which point you may want to consider slightly extreme measures to prune your family tree. Murder them or lock them up. Okay, so those are some of the easy ways to affect unity. Some of the more difficult ways to to affect unity. And when we're talking about affecting unity, we're talking about negatively affecting unity at this point. I should clarify that. One of the more annoying things in the game will be claims on your artifacts. This is a particular problem if you've got brothers who have land, or even nephews sometimes. They will demand artifacts from each other or from you. Really, the ideal succession in this game is one son, or maybe two, and one is never landed. It will cost you unity to refuse them giving them artifacts, but it will also cost you unity if you give them artifacts. Look at the 2 pages, the unity is not the same. The other one that pops up a lot in Muslim realms is divorces. You'll get something like, oh, we're not having children, we want to get divorced. If you accept the divorce, especially if it's to a member of your house or your sisters or cousins, you will lose, I think it's 6 unity. I'd have to double check. If you refuse, it costs you like 2 unity. Either way, it's negative. Basically, if you're given a decision that will cost you unity, check the opposite on decline or on accept, and usually one will cost you less than the other. And unless they're very important, save the unity. Now, if you're trying to destroy house unity, obviously take the one that costs you more unity. Okay, next mechanic, the Viziers. So, clan governments have Viziers, if you want to. Viziers are basically almost like a regent, but they're not. They help you boost your income, they give you more tax jurisdictions, which we will go over after this. But basically, you would have your normal regent, right? And this can happen under Muslim realms without a Vizier. However, you want to appoint Viziers. They will give you money, they will allow you to steal money from them. How do you put down a Vizier? This is actually something that bothered me for a while. There's no option in your courtiers. There's no option in your court. The easiest way I find is to find a minor landholder like in a mosque or something and go look for power sharing, appoint Vizier. Now, if you click on this, it will say appointing, this guy is not the most eligible candidate. If you don't if you don't select this guy, click on it, and then you will find your best Vizier candidate. Now, sometimes you may not want to accept them, but the odds are you want to appoint that Vizier. And then you simply go over, appoint them. Now, if they're on the council, they will leave. If they are landed, except in like a barony, a temple or something, they cannot be appointed Vizier. Only minor nobles can be appointed. This guy is unlanded, which has benefits and disadvantages. If he was landed, he can build up modifiers on his territory, which then you can steal for money. Because he's unlanded, you don't tend to get those modifiers. And when I say steal them, I mean to molt them. I have no idea how you say that, by the way. However, you can at any point demand money for them. However, it does take, I think, 10 years or some period of time where you can't demand money from them. You can always get basic taxes, but if they get modifiers, which you can read about here, they will sometimes pamper themselves as they build up. And honestly, I've never seen a Vizier get past notable. So these are pretty much useless at this point. I suspect there will be balancing changes and you will see these more often. You will notice the amount of money you get goes up. However, every time you take power from them or money from them, the scales of power give them power. Now, unlike a regent, that's actually not the worst thing. So if you look at scales of power, obviously it's different. There are more numbers. At level 1, it's relatively minor. You'll get some tax collector aptitude from their current scales of power, which isn't great. The best position here is to get to between 3 and 4. I particularly like 4. Beyond that, you start to take penalties. You have to pay prestige on mundane actions like revoking titles, imprisoning, executing, basic minor stuff. You want to avoid that. And you also want to avoid getting to level 7, because if you do, if the majority of vassals support a coup, they can issue an ultimatum and take over. Thankfully, the balance of power tends to swing more towards you if it's past 40. So really, you're going to be sitting around here anyway, which is where you want to sit. As you increase level 1, 10% of the aptitude is tax. 20%, 40%, and then 60. You don't want to get to 60 though unless you're in desperate need of money. Risking getting overthrown by your vizier is not worth it. However, ending a vizierate is what they're calling it, isn't necessarily worth doing either. You want a vizier in power as much as you can as a clan government, unless you're super tiny and you have no reason to have a vizier. You also want to make sure that you probably adjust what their mandate is. I recommend fill coffers, usually because money development, always good. If you're fighting, swell armies, promote authority. If you're struggling with council or opinion stuff, or you have faction trouble. I've never had that issue, so I just tend to leave it on fill coffers because the additional money is nice. Now, it's important to remember they have a loyalty. They can be selfless, self-interested, or situational. In the case of a vizier, you kind of want situational. Selfless people don't tend to get the modifiers that you can steal gold from. Self-interested people tend to try and swing the scales of power in their favor super fast, whereas situational sometimes helps themselves, sometimes don't. You can obviously change that by swaying them, by gifting them, and it does give you a very nice evaluation of what their loyalty to you is. Basically, if it's positive, they're going to be more on your side. If it's negative, they're going to be looking out for themselves. Arbitrary people, very hard to convince to get on your side. Just saying. Once a vizier dies, the next vizier will take over. You can see the score, you can see the people ahead, and if you want, you can start influencing their opinion. They hold office basically until they die. Now, moving on from the vizier, we're going to get into tax, how to make money as a clan, because it is very different than a feudal realm. Now, the important thing here before we leave this page is that Liege gets available tax jurisdictions. This goes up as you get more scales of power swung against you by your vizier. If you sit around 40 sometime, or 4 or 5, you can get usually 2 tax jurisdictions. You want tax jurisdictions, especially if you're a large realm. And we're going to talk about that right now. So if you're on a basic page and you go to your realm, at the bottom you will see your tax jurisdictions, taxes, levies from domain, that's your personal stuff, from your vassals. You can click on tax jurisdictions, or you can go down here and click on this nice little bag of money. Now, we have 2 of 3 tax collectors, and it goes over where you get them from. Because we're a king, we have 2. Anything less, you have less. Because we have a vizier, we get +1 automatically. If the vizier gets to about 4 or 5, you may get 2. Small realms don't necessarily need too many tax collectors, but big realms desperately need them. For example, if you were to play the Abbassides, which I will probably show you later, you can, in each tax jurisdiction, manage 12 taxpayers. The problem is, if they're not in this, they don't really pay you tax. And that is important to remember here. And they have to have a tax collector. So if you've got more than 12, we do not, we only have 5, we would need a second taxpayer. If we had above 24, we would need a third. If you're a huge realm and you have dozens or hundreds of vassals, you need an immense amount of tax collectors. And it is very hard to get them. There's only a few ways to get them, and we'll go over that a little bit later, but the majority of the ones you're going to get early on are from your vizier. Now, within your realm, obviously you get money from your personal domain, and this is where most of your money is going to come, especially if you're small. Once you get larger, you'll start getting more from your tax jurisdictions. Within a tax jurisdiction, you can assign taxpayers on your own, or you can automatically assign them. Unless you're trying to maximize it, I recommend automatically assign. At some point, I suspect Paradox, the game creators, will create a map mode that allows you to see what your tax jurisdiction is, because right now, there's really no way to tell who is in this other than going to the list and literally going down and trying to hover over these people and say, oh, that's the land they rule. If there is a map mode and you know where it is, let me know because it's driving me nuts. But I don't think there is. So your vassals will tend to take the highest paying ones, assign them first, and then they will just add all the others. Thankfully, that was done. Now, within a tax jurisdiction, because the important thing here is you do not have your standard vassal contract under your feudals. You only have a very limited amount. And you can still do these, but I recommend you avoid doing them at all if you can, because most of your interactions are going to be done through your tax jurisdictions. Thankfully, you don't have all the trouble with relations and people upping their contract and lowering their contract in a clan realm, unlike a feudal realm. However, you do have these tax decrees. Now, there are 8 of them, and they vary. The first one here, and thankfully they tell you what you do, basic taxes, the aptitude. Every tax collector has an aptitude. And it's not entirely clear what the different levels are, but if we look at this, this person has good skills. This person has terrible skills. They are a poor tax collector. Sometimes you want poor tax collectors, but if you need money, you want good tax collectors. And in fact, you can kind of see who you could appoint as tax collectors. Obviously, these are poor. Now, within it, that is the basic one. Think feudal, normal, and normal. It will get you some decent amount. As you will see, we will lose income if we were to switch to this. The second one, zakat. Tax multiplier 25%. Liege per vassal. Per vassal in this, up to 12, you will get 1% more money. However, the vassal will get more piety, but their opinion of you will drop by 30. This can be devastating. I do not recommend putting zakat on, and if you do put it on, you're going to want to put it on people of your own culture. The reason is if they're a different culture, they can have penalties. Plus, you can always mess around with the traditions of your culture so they have higher approval opinion of you anyway, in which case this is amazing. You'd have to do like loyalty and other stuff as traditions if you wanted to pull this off long periods. If you're a small realm, you can probably do this because you're stronger than your subjects. Just be aware you probably don't want to apply this to your richest and most powerful vassals. 30 opinion really hurts. The next one, Iqua. This is the military one, and this is actually the one where having a bad tax collector doing this is not a problem. So while, yes, you get bonuses here, the aptitude really matters the most on basics. Zakat matters a little bit, but Iqua, you lose taxes and you lose levies. So as you can see, we're small, so we'd only lose 30 and 0.3 gold, which, considering how small we are, is substantial. However, per vassal in this tax decree, we will get +1 men-at-arms damage. However, the vassals can recruit men-at-arms cheaper, maintain them cheaper, but they have a higher opinion of you. It kind of balances out a little bit. I don't like this one because I find that vassals having more men-at-arms, if they happen to join factions, it gets rapidly out of control, and the 15 opinion of liege doesn't tend to be decisive whether or not they join factions. However, if you've got only poor tax collectors and you want to fight a lot, this is quite useful. If you picked your poorest land that's going to get you no money in levies or troops, stick that into a jurisdiction, so you'd have to do it manually, not automatically. It would be worth running this contract on them. So if you've got like a lot of Saharan barons or something. Next one, Ghazi. And I do apologize if I'm saying these wrong. This one, less levies. You get income while at war per vassal, so up to 12. Piety, up to 24. Vassals get more money at war, and they get more piety. This is what's important. Vassal uses less piety for the holy wars, but more prestige for any other CVs. They're less likely to fight within the realm, more likely to attack your enemies. The only problem with that is if you were to implement it, where are you going to implement it? You have to assume your vassals are going to beat the people they're fighting. And at the start of the game, there's very few areas where the Muslims border nations that dukes or even vassal kings can fight. Africa is a great one. For example, if you were to apply it to the ones on the Saharan border, they tend to expand south. If you do it in the Egyptian areas, they don't tend to invade here because these guys are actually all tribal with lots of troops. They don't tend to work well in Arabia because they're all Muslim. The Byzantines will stop you. This is, of course, the 867 start. Khazaria will stop you. You might pick up a little bit here. This is actually a good area, Afghanistan region, because there's a lot of minor lords and there's a lot of invasion, civil strife, and they will expand there. So if you're going to use it, make sure you put it on your border lords, not your central lords. It's basically like a march decree. Now, Jizya status is basically if the people are of a different faith, people of the book type attitude, they pay more money, less levies, they lose prestige, but you can't demand conversion, you can't convert, you cannot use faith to revoke them, and you cannot revoke titles basically for any reason. If you've got a lot of land of a different religion, you can get a lot of money out of it. Big one might be Iberia here, where you've got lots of non-Muslim territory, or you've launched a huge invasion somewhere else in the world and you've got lots of pagans or Christians, for example. It can become useful there. The downside is you can't revoke their lands. So if they revolt and stuff, it's kind of a pain to control them, and that land is never going to get more stable. For example, if we do it, though, we would get slightly more money, a lot less levies. You can apply it on your own people, kind of, which is interesting. But it doesn't work on the same religion. So you have to have vassals who are not. So we have 5 there, they would all be removed. If we had 1, they would stay. Now the nice thing is once you apply this, automatically vassals of different religion will be added to that and none of your own. This is assuming you have excess tax collectors. In my experience, you never do if you're growing. The next one is interesting here. This is the Dequan here. These lightened magnates. Taxes, levies, lose prestige per vassal, so you're going to be losing 24% prestige a month, which can really hurt, but you'll get monthly stuff. This is basically Persia. If you're playing as one of the Iranian Persian cultures, you will have this. Almost no other clan will. If you are, it's quite useful if you can stand the loss of monthly prestige, which is not necessarily great. The next one here, Muqata status. They pay less levies, less taxes, get more prestige. You do. So you can get up to, what is that, 1.2 a month, which is decent. They have a plus 30 opinion and development growth. If you're facing revolts, rebellions, or you're playing the Abbasids, and you're trying to prevent civil wars or disloyal people, or you've got dirt cheap land of a different religion, throw them under this. They won't revolt, they'll like you, and they'll develop their lands faster. The last one here, Maggu, Ancient Authority. This is the Sassanids. Reduced taxes. It's not a huge reduction, but we get additional development growth. This can be very good if you want plus 12 development growth in your capital, but the reality is there's easier ways of getting development growth. So, now that we've gone all over this, and I've kind of told you how and where to use them, what do I recommend to do? I recommend basic taxes. 90% of the time. If you're a small realm and you need money, zakat. If you want to have really powerful men at arms, but risk your vassals causing trouble, go with Iqwa. If you want your vassals to fight non-Muslims, or whatever religion you might be at the time, Ghazi. I don't really bother with the bottom ones at all. You're usually better making your realm stable than trying to tax it heavier. This one, you have to do very well in Persia, but the 24 prestige hurts. This one, if you're facing revolts, only use this if you're facing revolts or instability. And this last one, not worth doing basically ever. There you go. That's tax jurisdictions in a nutshell. So, you might be asking, other ways to gain tax jurisdictions. Now, the game is, as far as I can tell, slightly off with its descriptions here. It says with traditions you can get more. Unless there's some obscure tradition, I did not find a cultural tradition that gives more tax jurisdictions. There might be some Persian one I didn't notice. None of the major ones I looked at had it. You can get more with rank as you level up. Emperors have, I think, 3 to start. Kings, dukes, counts, barons. If you're a baron, you're not going to have any subjects anyway, and you're probably not going to be playing the game. On the other hand, innovations, there is ways to get tax jurisdictions. So let's glance at those. Oops, sorry. Helps if I click on the right button. So if we go to the innovations, tribal era, there is nothing. You can go through this and look yourself. There is nothing there. However, in the early medieval, if you were to go down to bailiffs, +1 available tax jurisdictions. If you're a large realm and you're not taxing your people, this should probably be the first innovation you get in the medieval era. Unless, of course, you need troops. You can pretty much ignore the hereditary rule stuff until you get to the last age and get primogeniture. Now, oddly enough, High Medieval does not have an additional tax jurisdiction. I have a feeling this will be adjusted, and hopefully they will add one. If they do, it'll probably be on banking or urbanization. However, Late Medieval has another one. It's on court officials, so it's one up from where the other one was. That will give you +1 domain and tax jurisdictions. Again, probably the first thing you're going to want to research when you get to this age. And those are the ways you gain more tax jurisdictions. Viziers, somewhere there might be a tradition, or those 2 innovations. One in the early medieval, the other in the late medieval. Okay, let's go over a couple less straightforward concepts. So one of the big things in clan governments is you want to try and forge internal alliances. You saw me do one with the prince here. If we were to shift to a larger realm, which I will do now. Okay, here we are at a midway save on one of my abbassides. You will see that we have a large realm, and by negotiating alliances within the realm, we can gain stuff. See, I believe I have family members over here. If they were related to us, or we didn't already have alliances, getting hostages can help as well. Demanding hostages costs you some. Exchanging hostages 1 for 1 can also cost unity. If they decide to become your hostage, that's a good thing. You can offer hostages if you wanted to, again costing house unity. It's a little frustrating that way. However, forming alliances within your realm is a very good thing. If you find a close family member who's of your one, it can be worth trying to get an alliance with them. Here's also where you can extol their virtuousness or accuse of decadence and lose 12. There's the penalty for accuse of decadence. I do want to point out that internal alliances is very good. They have a penalty if they do not have an alliance with you. No alliance as clan vassal. That's a -15. You want to try and form as many alliances within your clan as possible. This has an effect on how you want to play clan governments. Because you want to get alliances, you're actually better off than most nations combining and issuing kingdom titles. Because now you just have to make an alliance or friendship with one person rather than everyone beneath them. Plus, when it comes to tax jurisdictions, it also makes life a lot easier to keep track of. Let's see if I can find these ones. Here we go. This guy gets his lands beneath it. So we only have to manage one person in that tax jurisdictions rather than a lot beneath him. So it makes life easier. This means you probably want to give out duchy titles and kingdom titles far before you want to do so in a feudal realm. Another thing to think about as a clan government is giving titles to your dynasty. While giving titles to your dynasty has some bonuses, as we saw earlier with some of the house decisions over here, send bailiffs based off house members will increase up to 10. Beyond 10, there's not a huge incentive to have more of your family landed. If you do, they tend to fight amongst themselves. However, if you wish to give them titles, you want to separate the lands they hold. By which, I mean, don't put them next to each other. If we are to glance at houses, for example. Oops. Are you gonna? Oh, I have to go within, don't I? If we were to look at actual houses within our empire, oh, there's no easy way to do it. You'd see that there's some Abbassids here, there's some Abbassids here. There's a fair amount of our dynasty members hold titles. I made a mistake in playing this game, and I created this area. I gave this person a duchy title. I assigned a lot of other members of the Abbassids down here, and it was a disaster. These guys keep fighting with each other, backstabbing each other, and they're lowering house unity to a very large degree. If we were to look at house unity, they're taking hostages, and it's a lot of the people doing it are in this region. They might have titles elsewhere, but they're associated here. So if you're going to give titles to your house members, separate them. Put one over here, put one over here, put one over here. You don't want them fighting. It will allow you to maintain more stable unity. If you want people to fight, put them all together and you will have no house unity. Here, for example, is negotiate alliance, gets you 4 unity. So gets rid of the 15, no alliance within clan vassal, and it gets you more unity. Another thing that's worth pointed out is since you can't assign tax collectors who are landed, it is usually, I find, your best tax collectors tend to be cousins or brothers. For example, this guy's good. The reason is I've been able to guide his education as this character's father. Thus, I could raise him to be good at his job. So long as I don't give him land, he makes a wonderful tax collector. So by and large, your best tax collectors probably going to be your family members. You can, oddly enough, assign your player heir as a tax collector, and you can actually assign your vizier as a tax collector, which is really kind of interesting. Here, for example, is multzing them. This guy does not have a personal one, but as you can see, the value goes up based off the size. If you could get it maxed out, you would get tons of money. But this is where we're at here. And from them, let's go to tax jurisdictions. You will see that we have 2 from support from our regent, which is the vizier. Okay, well, that's going to be it for this video. Hopefully this has helped you understand how to manage a clan more. It's a very interesting form of government. It's a lot less stable than a feudal government, but it does give large amounts of money and actually gives levies. What I find is when I start to fall into debt as a clan, a lot of my family members will rush over and give me gifts of cash, which is extremely helpful. But playing as a large empire here, struggling to cover all my tax collectors without 5. So this is about my max size as an empire, where I'm going to make money from it until the late medieval period. Anyhow, that will be it. Thank you guys all for watching. If you enjoyed this, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know which tip helped you the most. If you find the max map mode for tax collectors, let me know. And check out my other Crusader Kings guides. I do lots of guides. That's kind of what the channel is for. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.